Thank you, Linda. Hello, everyone. This is Rick Mansfield, and just wanted to just remind everyone that our staff here continues to pray for everyone as the virus is, really kind of taken over the whole world and changed our regular routines in our lives. Hopefully, you're able to get some good time in, whether that's with a accordance reading the Bible or reading the Bible in a print version or something else. But our webinar today is about using mobile tools, and we did a similar, or I led a similar webinar back when we did the previous eAcademy, and I was wanting to do both iOS and Android, and had a lot of trouble with the Android just cutting out and disappearing. So, but I've got the Android version right here. And so I've got my iPad Pro and I've got my Samsung Galaxy Tab S6, and my iPhone even is going to make an appearance here before it's over with. But hopefully everything will continue, and we can get a lot of Android time in here too, because I know we have lots of Android users. I'm going to turn off my webcam so it doesn't take up your screen. And let's let me just begin. I'm going to pull my web browser up here for a moment, and let me just begin by speaking of Android, making a couple of recommendations that I normally make, because occasionally I'll have people ask me, well, I've got an Android phone. What about an Android tablet? And that's one of the things that I think that on iOS with the iPad, there's a number of different iPad sizes, and there's really good strong support. And if you dial back 4 or 5 years, there were lots of different Android devices, tablets, and Android tablets, with a couple of exceptions, have not taken off well. And so a lot of the vendors that were selling them just kind of backed out of that market. However, I really love I have 2 Android tablets, and I'm going to show you both of them, here, like on the tabs. I have a low end one and a high end one. And when people ask me what I recommend, this is the one that is the 2 recommends that I have. If you don't want to spend a lot of money and you just want a reader for accordance and maybe Kindle books and things like that, the Amazon Fire HD8 I think is perfect. If you're familiar with iPads, it's kind of the size of a iPad Mini, but it'll fit in your hand. If your grip is wide enough, but it's a perfect size, about like a little bit larger than a paperback novel or something like that. Perfect for reading, and so I really recommend these. I recommend the 8-inch. Now they do make a 7-inch, I believe, but I recommend the 8-inch. Let me turn on Pinpoint. I recommend the 8-inch because there's a difference in the screen. The screen is more high definition in the 8-inch version, and they've come down to $49.99, which I can't. I actually, the first time I bought one of these, I've actually purchased some for other people, and we purchased some for the company as giveaways. But I've actually paid the $79.99, I think, for my original one. Now they're down to $49.99. So it's a really good, if you just want an extra tablet, even if you're an iPad user and you just want an extra tablet, this is a great extra tablet to get for the price. You just can't beat it. If you're someone who likes to maybe preach or teach from a tablet, because we have lots of accordance users who do that from an iPad. Then they make a 10-inch version of this as well. And so let's see here. Here's the 10-inch version, and a little bit larger. And the price again is not bad, much cheaper than an iPad. And of course the version of, they have kind of their own version of Android on here, but the same version of accordance for Android works on both, standard Android phones and tablets, as well as the Amazon Fire. In fact, our Android version is in both the Amazon App Store and the Google Play Store. So, and we have a third option. You can just download it straight from our servers as well. That's one thing we can't do with iOS. So that's kind of the low end that I recommend, especially this 8-inch one. And then I also have the Samsung Galaxy Tab S6. This is really, as far as I know, about the only high-end Android tablet still around. Now there may be a couple of others, and I don't follow the market that closely, but this is really nice. I've had 4, I guess, Samsung tablets over the years, going all the way back to 2010, and this is the best one that they've made yet. It comes with a stylus. You can get the additional keyboard that comes with an iPad. I see that Apple has followed suit, so they're releasing an iPad with a keyboard and trackpad as well. This is really nice. This is one that you could get you could really get some work done on. They are pricey though, and let me see here if it tells us a price anywhere. I think it's around $500 or so. Maybe you have to go all the way down to the bottom to buy it. They want to sell you on it first. Goodness. Well, I'm sure it's here. So that's a really long web page. Let's scroll all the way to the bottom. And even now, there's still just to learn more. So anyway, you can go explore Samsung's website. These are around $500 once you get the accessories and so forth. So, but it is a very good tablet, and I do recommend that as well. Okay, so I don't get any royalties for recommending either of those, but I just wanted to make it aware because I'm showing a tablet today, and a lot of times it's hard to people aren't sure what kind of Android tablet to get if they want something like that. So first of all, let's talk about, our whole idea here is that you can take it with you. And so we're talking about using accordance from these mobile devices. Now, up front, it's no secret that we hide that our mobile devices do not have as many features as our desktop versions on Windows and Mac OS. That's not a secret. I will say again that from discussions that I've been in already this year, I think this is going to be a stellar year for our mobile apps. The iOS app on iPhone and iPad is a little bit ahead of the Android app, which is our newest platform that we've released. However, the Android version is going to catch up very quickly. And so I don't think that we're going to have to wait for long for that. And both of these platforms are going to see significant upgrades before the year is over, again, based on the discussions that I've been part of. So I think that's something to be excited about. I have run into Accordance users that all they use is Accordance in a mobile version. And so we're aware of that. And so we're going to do everything we can to beef that up. And I know one of the big complaints that we often have is that, hey, you've only got 2 columns. And so we're looking at implementing some other strategies for doing that. And I don't know if that'll be a tabbed interface or exactly how they'll do it, but they're going to look at some other options for that too. I'm not one of the programmers, so I can't tell you anything specific about app development strategies and so forth like that. But I use them. I use them too. If I were, I have used tablets. I would say I've used tablets as my sole device in classrooms and preaching in churches, and so I'm no stranger to this, and I really like the portability of these kinds of devices. So, and I know that there are a number of you out there that like to do that too. Having said all of that, one of the big deals for getting your content between devices is syncing, and I'm going to bring up the desktop version of Accordance for a moment and talk about syncing between all of your devices. Like I said, I know that there are some people who only use the mobile devices, but I think probably the majority of our users still use the the desktop versions in addition to the mobile versions. I think we're seeing, I think long term, I think we're seeing a shift probably more toward mobile, but that hasn't completely happened yet. So, but you know, when we talk about syncing, one of the ways that we can sync is through Dropbox. And so I'm going to go to my preferences. If you're on a Windows machine, your preferences are under the edit menu. On a Mac, they're under the accordance menu. And once we get to the actual preferences, they're all about the same. Okay, but one of the things that we use for syncing, here's the tab right here, is we use Dropbox. Now, I know that that's become a little bit problematic. When we first started using Dropbox, it was a free solution. I mean, you could be syncing. Well, I was syncing hundreds of items because I have so many user tools. I was syncing hundreds of items in the Dropbox, the free version of Dropbox, and that has I think that, you know, I don't think that that's possible anymore, or it's not as easy to do anymore. In fact, I for other purposes, not related to accordance syncing, I now have the, you know, $10 a month or whatever it is version of Dropbox. But I know that this is an issue for some, and we are looking at other ways to sync. I don't know that anything has been decided yet, but we're looking at some alternatives, and not even necessarily with a third party like Dropbox, but perhaps our own internal solution for syncing content. But having said all that, right now we're using Dropbox, so you have to have a Dropbox account. If I were not set up a Dropbox, it would say link to Dropbox, your Dropbox account here, and so I would do that. And so then you can choose what you have syncing between your devices. So notice what I have turned on. I have turned on user notes, user tools, highlights, bookmarks, stacks, papers, places, and then I don't have current session set up, because when current session is really for just Mac and Windows for the most part. When you jump back and forth, the way I do sometimes when I'm jumping from Windows to Mac, I don't necessarily want to start up where the other platform, you know, what I was doing there. I'm there for different purposes, so I don't check this one because that way I don't have to dismiss a dialog box. But I do have everything else checked. Now I should say that at the moment, the only thing that's going to sync with Android is highlights. Now you can still have all of these checked, especially if you have a different computer, if you have an iOS device, and maybe you want them all. But if you have an Android device right now, only highlights is syncing, because we just introduced syncing to the mobile version of Accordance, and that was the easy one to just go ahead and throw in there. That's kind of the camel's nose under the tent for syncing. But these other syncing items will be added hopefully sooner rather than later. So it's all coming, it's all in the works, and our programmers are very good, so they're working on these things. But I keep all of those synced. Now I keep everything on manual. I just do. Some people will keep that on automatic, and then everything on your Mac or Windows computer is going to sync in the background. I do it manually, and so if you have it manual, then if you're on the Mac, you go to the Accordance menu. The Accordance menu, and you can say sync with Dropbox. If you are in Windows, there's a separate utilities menu, and you can choose sync sync to Dropbox there, and do that manually. I just keep it on because I don't like those processes going on in the background, and that's just me. And sometimes I'm also testing beta versions, and sometimes in my experience, the syncing can conflict with some of the betas, so I just leave that to manual. Now, when we're talking about I'm going to hide Accordance here. The mobile versions right now, these are also manual syncs as well. And so I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I think to make this easier, I'm going to just put, if I can grab, there we go. I'm going to just have one device on the time here, so that'll go on the screen at a time, so that'll go full screen. If you're in, see, this is our our Android version. And so if I come here in the Android version and I want to set up syncing, I'm going to go to this menu right here. And so this is the kind of the more features menu. And I want to go to settings. Now I've got the sync already set up here, but if I haven't done that, I need to go to settings first. Okay. And then in settings, I need to go down here to where it says syncing. All right, so now I can, and this it tells me this Dropbox account is linked, so I'm already set up. I can choose to sync now, or I can do that later as well. And again, it's only doing highlights at the moment, but that's just the first thing, and others are coming. Once I have syncing set up, then I don't have to go back into the settings to sync. I can just come to this menu right up here again. And I can just from right here, I can choose sync, and I can make my highlights in Accordance Mobile sync that way, and that's going to allow me to, any highlights that I've done on any device that at least from its last sync is going to come over to my Android device. So let me switch places here. Whoops. Oh, I'm trying to drag this from the actual device. That will not work. Okay, so let me grab that, and then I'll move the iOS version back over here. I'm running this little app here called Reflector 3 that's allowing me to mirror my mobile devices here on the screen. So in Accordance for iOS, and this will work the exact same way on an iPhone as it does on the iPad. It's just that the iPad has such a bigger screen. I usually just work from that when I'm doing these kinds of demonstrations. So I'm going to do the same kind of thing here. I'm going to, well, actually, no, I'm not. I actually like the Android interface for syncing better than and going to settings better than I do in the iOS version now. I think that the interface is starting to get a little bit ahead on the Android version, but in iOS we still have to go down here to the library menu. So I go to the library menu, and then down here at the very bottom is a little gear for my settings, and that's where I'm going to go set up syncing if I haven't done that already. And I'm going to scroll down here, and let's see, I think where did it go? Here we go. So right here in user content syncing. So if I'd never set this up, it would say link to Dropbox, but I've got it set up, so that's not there. And I don't know if I set it with the Android version, but I'll say it here. If you've never set it up, make sure first that Dropbox is on your mobile device. It'll be quicker that way. Be logged into that, and then when you ask it to link to your Dropbox account, it's going to ask you to confirm that. I don't remember if it asks you to put in your password. I think perhaps it doesn't if you've got Dropbox running already, but you're going to have to confirm your account in order to do that. The iOS version has a secondary feature too. You see where it says sync button action, and there is another way to sync with the iOS version. You can sync through Wi-Fi, which I think syncing through Wi-Fi is a great option if you don't want to use Dropbox. But again, it's going to always be manual. And let me show you right here, syncing through Wi-Fi. On the Accordance menu, it's going to be right here, sync with mobile device. And if I choose sync with mobile device, it's going to come here and it's going to look for either an iPhone or iPad that I've also got to be in that setting. So let me switch here to back to my iPad. I'm going to go out of these settings. I'm going to say done up here, and then if I go right over here, there's this sync button, and I've got both options set, so I can tell it to sync user content with Dropbox manually, or I can say sync all content with Accordance. If I say sync all content with Accordance, then it's going to Let me go back to Accordance here. Whoops. Now, see, it's showing my iPad. All right, now, and I'm not going to do that right now. If you absolutely don't want to do Dropbox and you're using an iOS device, that's your best method. If that's the only thing that you can do. The other thing I would say about that method too is that if you're in a workplace or a school library or something like that, routers may block one device from seeing another device. And so I found that it works fine on my home Wi-Fi, but like I can't get it to work, if I've tried to do it from Starbucks or if I've tried to do it from, like I said, school library or some kind of institution or workplace, you may have difficulty. You may have difficulty doing that. All right. So again, if you're going to sync with Dropbox, you're gonna tap this button right down here, and you can say sync user content with Dropbox, and then all that's going to come over. Any changes you've made to notes, highlights, if you've created new user tools or papers or that kind of thing, is going to come over here to your device. I'm going to say close on that, and but I just wanted to kind of go over some of those things because we're going to be talking about some of the kinds of content that you do sync here, and so it's kind of important that we kind of laid that out. And if you want more details about that, I do offer an iOS webinar where I go into a little bit more detail, and I'll offer an Android webinar as well that we can go into more detail there too. All right, so I'm going to bring for a moment. Our desktop version of Accordance back, and so here we are in our desktop version of Accordance. And if you're in the eAcademy session that I did yesterday, I talked a little bit about papers, and I talked about this is not a full-fledged word processor, but it is an editor in Accordance. Where it's become very popular is for professors. And so let's see, which one did I have open yet? Oh, I had David Lang's heart failure series yesterday. Yeah, there it is. This was I don't remember, it was a Bible study or sermon series that he did called the Heart Failure Series, and I got a copy of his paper that he created this in. So a lot of pastors especially have found these useful, and I've seen pastors preaching from iPads using the papers after they've synced it over to the iPad. And so this is a work that you can edit. It's got hyperlinks, so you can see down there, for instance, in my instant details, you see that information there, and of course this will sync over to the iPad. You can't yet sync it over to Android, but I'm going to show you how to get it into Android anyway. So if you have it on your iPad, let me switch back to the iPad for a moment. In fact, I'm going to let me just minimize Accordance for a moment. If you have already synced the paper over to iPad, you would just go into that library icon that's down here, and then down here in your library you have a section called My Papers. All right, so here I can go straight to that, and I don't know, that's not right. I have no idea why that's not showing up there. It was there earlier. That's interesting. That's part of it, isn't it? Let's see here. Let me see if I can do a quick sync. Let's see here. Let's sync with Dropbox. This will be live demonstration. I don't think I probably have to go out and then come back in. I don't know if that's gonna. But I'll open up one of the other ones. I'll tell you what. That's what I'll do. I'll go in here, and wow, I'm not getting anything. Maybe, no, I'm not. That's really bizarre. Huh. Well, that's a bug. That's a bug for me to return. The last time I was in this, it worked. It worked absolutely just fine. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on there. Let me try one more. Whoops. Look at that. And I'm not running beta or anything, so I don't know why that's not showing up. Okay. Well, you get the idea. Whoops, let me go back here to accordance, and we'll just go back to a biblical text there. All right, well, I tell you what, let me show you how you can get a paper onto Android, even though we cannot yet sync them. There is a way. So if I am here in accordance and I have my paper, all right. There's actually more than one way to do this. It's according to what you want to load it into. So I can export the paper here. So I can save this as a text file, plain text, RTF, or a Word document, docx. I can also print that, and so I can, I can choose save as PDF, and I can give it a title, and I can save that, and then I can move it over to the actual Android. To the Android device, however I want to do that. I also have OneDrive installed, so that's usually how I just get that over there. If I want to pull it up in Word, in fact, let me show you that as well. So let me close that for a minute, and let's bring back up our Android version, which I have misplaced. Here it is. Okay, so let me show you how to do that, or how to get them side by side. If you are on of course, you could do this by itself. You could do this by itself if you were using just a phone. If we're talking preaching a sermon, I don't know if a phone is the best source for that, unless all of your other devices are broken, and you've forgotten your manuscript at home. But let's think in terms of a mobile device. And so, what I've done is I've just loaded this in Microsoft. I exported it as a Word document. And so here's that heart failure series that David put together. And so I've got that right here. So I've got it on my device. And what if I want to have it side by side with accordance during like a preaching type demonstration? I can actually do that well. Now, I always I don't know about you, but when I put accordance side by side with something, my preference is to have accordance on the left, and then the second document on the right. So here on the Samsung Galaxy tab, I swipe in from the right, and I can choose Microsoft Word, and there's my sermon series right there. I might want to make it a little bit larger. I can even change the width here of accordance, kind of move it over so that I can have my manuscript a little bit larger. But then I've got them side by side, so I can refer back and forth to the biblical text, and I can also refer back and forth to my sermon that I created in Papers. So I'm showing you this because I don't think this is the permanent solution, but for right now, for folks who are really invested in Papers and also the Android ecosystem, this is a great way to get your content over there. And this doesn't have to be in Microsoft Word. It can also be, you could export it as a PDF. You could export it as an RTF file and open up some other word processor on your tablet as well. That would be just fine. So however you want to do that. So so just keep that in mind. Now the other, speaking of split screen, and I'm going to bring back, I'm going to move over Android for a moment and bring back my iPad screen. So when we're talking about work on the go, all right. these devices are great for that. If you have a keyboard that you can attach to it. And I usually say if you want to go to a coffee shop, a lot of us can't go to coffee shops right now because they're closed because of the virus. But wherever it is that you would be mobile with one of these devices, a lot of times it's nicer if you're just writing to be able to go to with just a mobile device that you can carry real easily. Perhaps you don't even need a bag. You can just walk in with it in your hand or something like that. And so the wonderful you saw a moment ago the Android device with split screen, and of course the iPad Pro, and there are certain iPads that will do split screen as well. And off the top of my head, I can't remember. I know all the iPad Pros will. I know the newest Mac Minis will. I can't remember the other iPads which ones will and which ones won't. But like I said, I know the iPad Pros will. So if I were to come in here and want to have again accordance on one side, and maybe I'm working on a paper or an article or something like that. Whoops, I didn't even mean to do that. I can come in here and just kind of more gently than what I did the first time, bring my dock up on my iPad Pro. So I just swiped up from the bottom slowly, and it brought that dock. And so I do have Microsoft Word, but I also have on here MLL. A lot of people who work on the Mac like MLL, and so I'm going to just open up MLL. Whoops, I did it as an overlay. Well, that's great that I could do that, but let's put it here side by side. And let's open up this document right here. And so, and what I can do over here with accordance is I can come over here to this. If I still want to keep two text, but maybe I want them oriented a little bit different, I can hit this orientation button now that I have more of a kind of a more narrow view there, and I can have these side by side. And truth be told, if I was just working by myself, I probably wouldn't have the text this large. That's more for your purposes than mine. But here, over here, you see the paper. This is actually an old paper that I wrote in seminary a long time ago. But I this is something that a student, a professor, a pastor working on a manuscript or something like that. You're working on an article. Student working on an exegesis paper. You can have this, and you can edit the content right here. I can copy and paste. Let's see here. Whoops, now I'm highlighting. I didn't mean to highlight. Don't do that. I can select and drag to copy that, and then I can paste that into here, and you see that it comes in. You see the Greek text right there. So that's just incredibly powerful for a lot of people. Even if you're a student taking notes, we talked in the session I did yesterday about taking notes in accordance, and I was thinking at that point more with the laptop, but so you could also do this here. You could have accordance on one side for your biblical text, and you could have your notes file if it's in something like MLL or Word right here on the right. Okay, and let me just quickly show you the same thing, that same kind of thing with a paper here, although my previous point would have probably illustrated it just as well on this split screen. There we go. But let me pull Android in here again. And I'll pull in Word. And this time I'm going to go to File, Open, and here's that same paper right here. So so again, kind of on this screen a little bit smaller to see, but again, look, I found a typo just right there. Look at that. Wow, I wonder if that got marked off. And there's another one. No, oh, you know what that is? That somehow it changed where I had OT for Old Testament. Yeah, that's supposed to be capital OT for Old Testament. Anyway, I've got my paper right here, and I can edit this. Let me hit enter to bring in a line, so I can edit from English. Whoops. There we go. Or if I want to, let's pull in a split screen here. If I want to grab some Hebrew there as well, I'm trying to. That's not letting me grab that text. I wonder if I had that. Let's try this. I'm going to just grab a couple of words here, or 3 words here, choose copy, and then I'll paste that in. And so, and you can, let me try to make that larger where you can see. So you see that, and of course I can edit that if I want to adjust the font or anything like that. And you'll notice it even kept it in the right character order from right to left as well, which is very helpful. I remember back in the day when that was a real challenge for a lot of word processors, but we see it lined up there correctly. All right, so just to show you that you can that's one way that you can take Accordance with you, and you can work on things like this from a mobile device. It's according to what kind of screen you can handle. This is a this is actually a 9 or 10 inch screen, and it could be a little bit more different. Of course, you could always do that to get a larger page, and then make that a little bit larger. The iPad that I have is a 12.9 inch screen, so it's a lot easier to do some of this kind of work. But it's certainly possible, and it's according to what you're willing to put up with in some cases. All right, so we'll move Word out of the way here, and let's switch gears for a little bit. We talked about syncing. We've talked about papers. We've talked about split screen, and here's where I'm going to bring in my iPhone just for a moment. Let's move this one out of the way, and a second here while I bring this up. Put it on this other screen. Here it is. Here's my iPhone. Okay, so if I go into Accordance, all right. One of the things I wanted to point out here, and the reason I'm doing this from the iPhone, is I wanted to point out that we have a number of audio resources that are very good for a mobile setting as well. And so if let me go here to my library, and for instance, I can just type audio here, and it's gonna show me what we have. And we tried this yesterday. I don't think that you'll be able to hear the audio at all, but I wanted to show you that it's here. So if I'm, if I tap on Matthew 1, now I can hear it in my headphones. I don't think that you can, but notice the controls down at the bottom, and so I can switch to the next section. I can pause it, just whatever I want to do. If I want to turn off those controls, I can do that. So we have a number of audio titles. So if you want to just listen to the text, of course you can also put those side by side in parallel columns with the Hebrew or Greek according to what you're looking at. I also want to point out we even have some. Yesterday I showed Decker's grammar that has the Greek text being read in it. We also have, let's see if I can find. We also have some music. I was looking for the Michael card. Well, let's see. It's a commentary.
Hey, Rick, just to interrupt you for a sec, a couple people are commenting that if you want to play audio, if you pull your mic plug out or your headphone plug out, I guess your mic plug, that you should be able to hear the audio from the computer. Anyway,
I'm wearing AirPods actually.
Okay, well that won't work then, will it?
Well, I probably could switch to it, but I'd rather not, sometimes the connection getting back is tricky. So I probably won't. You just, but while I've got you though, Mark, what's the name of the Michael Card commentary?
Oh, good question.
I should have looked this up.
See.
When I just started typing Michael Card, it didn't show up. We just type
Is
card.
it Living at the Crossroads? No, that's something else.
Is it Biblical Imagination?
Yeah,
yes,
that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. There it is. Okay, and notice that it sells with music. We do have a version without the music, but why would you want to get that? Because Michael Card's music is just really excellent. And so if I go here to, let's see where he's got one of the audio tracks. I haven't been in this in a while. Here we go. And so he's got, he actually wrote this commentary. A lot of people don't realize that. Whoa, I don't know why. Okay, a lot of people don't realize that Michael Card has a Bible degree, and so he's written these commentaries, and he's also a great composer of music. And so I can type on this song again. You're not going to be able to hear it without me switching from my AirPods, but I promise you it's really nice. And so you can just let this play from your. It will even play with the screen turned off. And so I turned off my screen, and I can still, in fact, I can control it from right here as well. I can pause and play and so forth. Okay, so and now, now I was getting also the Greek New Testament. All right, I'm going to unshare this screen. All right. I'm still getting the, okay, I was still hearing the Greek New Testament for some reason. All right, but now it's off. Okay, so I just wanted to show you those audio files, and because I just think that those are great resources to use if you're on the go, if you're traveling. And I'm gonna talk about using accordance with presentation tools in just a moment, but I also wanted to while we're talking about some resources, none of this is heavy sale, but I wanted to show you some resources that I generally recommend for use with mobile devices. I'm going to grab my, it really doesn't matter which one I use. I'm going to grab my, where is my, there we go. There, I'm going to grab my iPad and pull it back here onto the screen. All right. So and think really more in terms of, especially on a phone, if you're on an Android phone or a or an iPhone or something like that, and you want to have some quick information. One of these little bundles that we sell is the Pocket guides from IVP, Pocket Dictionaries, and these are so great. Because if you need something really quick, let me grab an example here. Here's Pocket Theological Terms Dictionary, for instance. Let me make this font a little bit larger so you can see it, and let me jump down just into the alphabet. It doesn't matter where we are. This is not going to be as long as something like an Anchor Bible Dictionary or even the Erdman's Dictionary that you have if you've got at least the starter. But these are great little short articles if you just need a quick definition of something. And by the way, I always say that I've used these definitions and also the Holman Illustrated Bible Dictionary because they're shorter. I've often used those when I'm teaching as just a quick definition to show. I think that these are really nice. And so, to me, this is, we probably should put together like an essential pocket bundle or essential mobile bundle or something like that has some of these kinds of tools. But these pocket dictionaries, in fact, let me pull up the website here because I had a tab for it, and let me show you the full list of these. Be down at the bottom. again, not a hard sell in here. I'm just going based on what people have asked me before about what's some essential stuff that I should carry. So you see all the dictionaries here: apologetics. You see, study of New Testament Greek, study of biblical Hebrew, liturgy, worship, theological terms, and so that bundle, our price $129. It's and of course we have a 25% coupon. I'll tell you a real cheapest way to get it right now is we have our English starter on sale for $49.90. So that would actually be the cheapest way to get this bundle. But that's a real good one. Let me reduce that. I mentioned the Holman Illustrated Bible Dictionary as well. That's also a really good dictionary. Let me just jump down here into the alphabet. Doesn't matter where, because you see all of these shorter. Now they do have some longer articles, but a lot of these are shorter, and it's also a source of some images and that kind of thing. I think this is a great first stop dictionary. And of course, if you have the starter or greater, you also have the Erdman's Dictionary already on your in your account in your library. A lot of times, people also ask me about the Bible. Usually, what they ask me is, when is the Bible Atlas coming to mobile? I don't have the answer to that question, but I can recommend the Holman Atlas. The Holman Atlas is a fantastic. It's just a fantastic atlas. It's probably my favorite of the standalone atlases anywhere, but especially among those that we offer. I'm going to try to get down to. It's got all kinds of things, images from the Holy Land, 3D images as well. Let me get down to one of the regular maps and show you an example. Here's a good example. So I can come in here, and these are just very colorful. And if you didn't know already, if you're building a presentation on your mobile device, like in PowerPoint or Keynote, your Accordance license gives you the right to use any of these images in any of your titles for kind of education purposes, preaching, teaching. And so it's really easy in the mobile version. You just tap and hold on the image, and I got copy or share. And so if I were to press copy right here, it's just going to automatically be on my clipboard, and then I could paste it into PowerPoint or Keynote or whatever I need to do along those lines. So that's just a really good resource that I recommend as well. If you need an atlas replacement until we get the atlas in the mobile version, which I assume we will one day, or if you just want to have a different set of maps. Now these are static maps, obviously, but I just think they're so great on here. So anyway, enough of a plug, enough of a commercial, as we're kind of at the midway point. I want to talk about teaching with presentation tools. And so, back when PowerPoint first came out in the 90s, PowerPoint first came out. I think it first came out on the Mac, and Microsoft bought it and ported it to Windows. And at the time, there were a number of these kinds of programs around that are just all gone now. It's just Keynote and PowerPoint at this point. But those were originally designed for sales, for creating a presentation for a boardroom or for a client or something like that. They were designed strictly for sales. And I remember looking at that. I was on staff at a church, and I thought to myself, those would be perfect for teaching using something like PowerPoint. And of course, back in the day, it was a lot more expensive to get PowerPoint than it is now. But I started using PowerPoint back in the day when we couldn't afford a projector. I would actually, Microsoft PowerPoint used to come with black and white versions of all their templates. And so I would work in a black and white template. I would print it. I had a laser printer. I would print it directly onto transparency paper, and I would use an overhead projector. And that's how I would do a lot of my teaching in church and in the classroom and those kinds of settings, until it came to the point that projectors came down to reasonable prices. And you know as well as I do now that A lot of churches have screens, and sometimes they're from projectors, and sometimes they're just large LCD screens or some of the other technologies that are out there. And so, you know, and Accordance has so many great resources for something like that, you know, and I've got, I think I still have, I think I've never taken them off. I think I've still got some old Sunday school lessons from the church we were at in Kentucky before we moved back to Louisiana. Let me see here. Let me go to PowerPoint, and you can see some of these Sunday school lessons I had done. That's not one. That was, I was doing a demo for someone, I think. Let's see here. Let's do something like this. And oh, that's pages right there. Okay. So this was an example, and this was, I think, based off of this was based off the we were using the Baptist literature in the class, but I created I created this in Keynote. This is in Keynote, which, if you're not familiar with Keynote, it's just Apple's version of PowerPoint. And I got this. Look, I got this particular image. I mean, I really just honestly pulled this up randomly. I got this particular image out of the Zondervan Atlas of the Bible. I said I always had to plug Accordance, you know, when I was teaching. So I gave the source, and then it came from Accordance. Just kind of put that down there, very small, but use that to illustrate. And then I usually had on here, I usually had my my user notes too. I was seeing, I haven't even used this in so long. I don't even remember how to show those anymore. Let's see here. I think it's changed on me since I was last in here. But I would have the teaching notes displayed there as well, and I could, you know, as I was doing my presentation, I would have my user notes, and I would have this on the screen. And so I always used Accordance for this kind of work. You know, I mean, almost every image that you're going to see here. Look, there's an example. I did borrow something from the other guys. Don't tell my bosses. But most of what you see here, well, here's something that's actually from the Sistine Chapel. I must have gotten that off the internet or something. But most of what you saw there in those images come from Accordance. That was from the curriculum, but that's one of those same maps that's in the Holman Atlas that I showed you a moment ago. So let's talk about that for a moment. Now, you can easily come in here and oh, here we go. Here's show presenter notes. See, this has actually changed since I was last in here. And so if I go to yeah, there we go. So I had here in my presenter notes the same questions that you have up here, but I also had a few notes down there as well. And so you can of course edit all of this. You can edit all of this in. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. In here on the tablet. I will tell you that what I normally did was I would do this from the desktop, and then I would transfer it over. And so I'm gonna bring this back up here for a moment, because I want to talk about talk about kind of finding the right kind of image for what you're looking for. And you may have seen me show something like this before, but let me do this. Let me open up Keynote when I do that. Okay, at the moment I've got Keynote on my other screen, but I will I'll bring it onto the screen you're looking at in just a moment. So if and everything I show you in Keynote would also be applicable in something like PowerPoint. But if I'm in Accordance here, and I tell you what I can do. Let's do this. Let's put Accordance on one side of the screen, and let me grab Keynote. Let's put it on the other side of the screen. There we go. All right, and we might have to zoom out on that a little bit. Okay, that's fine. Or I could just close this format for the moment. So I've got Keynote over here, and I've got I've got a coordinates over here on the left. All right, so the one example that I often use in something like this is, you know, teaching on something like um, uh, Elijah and and his face off on Mount Carmel with the prophets of Baal. Okay, and so let's say I'm going to do that. We'll call it Elijah versus the priest of Baal. All right, and what is that? Is that about? It's around first. Is that First Kings 18? It's yeah, there it is. It's in First Kings 18. So we can put as our subtitle First Kings 18. All right. So I've got this here, and again, I could do this on my device. I think it's just going to be easier for me to show you everything here. One thing that I can't do on the device yet, don't ever think anything is static with mobile, because we're always trying to add the features that you see here on the desktop. But one thing that I can't do yet is a research search. So I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to open up a research window here. In fact, we'll close this for right now so that you can see it better. And so I want to have a version of Baal here, an image of Baal. And so I typed in Baal, or I know that it's probably more technically pronounced Baal. That's just old habits, folks. But anyway, I'm going to do an image search. So I can do an image search for that as well. So I'm going to do this. And so I actually find lots of stuff. And in fact, I can just, I think I can just scroll through. Yeah, I can just scroll through these with the arrow keys. This is the guy I always like best. Here's Baal, and he's got that thunderbolt, that lightning in hand, and he's about to hurl it to the people who have displeased him on the ground. Well, just like in the mobile version, in the mobile version, I tap and hold. Here, I did a right click, or if you're on a laptop with a trackpad, like a 2-finger click to bring up a contextual menu. So I bring up that contextual menu, and I just choose copy picture. All right, so I'm going to come over here to my slide. I'm going to drag that. I'm going to drag that over here, and let's do the same thing with this. All right, there he is. Now it's centered. And let's drop Baal into here. All right, so we've got Baal into here. We'll make him a little bit smaller, right, so that he's there we go. So here's the first part of my presentation. Again, remember, any of these images, what was this from? This was from is that Bible and Pictures, or this is from the Zondervan Illustrated Biblical Background Commentary. That's where that image is coming from. But anyway, with your license, you have the right to use these in a nonprofit educational setting. Okay, so I've got my Baal image here. That's great, but he needs a little bit of work. All right, we need to come in here, and there's this great feature in Keynote, and PowerPoint has this too, by the way. It's called something different, but you can edit the alpha. And so this little icon right here. And so if I come here with my mouse, anything that is the color that's in the little bullseye there is going to be replaced, or it's going to be made transparent. So I can come here and I can start doing this. All right. And he looks pretty good there, right? Except what I missed a spot. I missed right there under his arm. So let's go here, and let's pull in here, and I can say, okay, done. And now he looks pretty good. He's ready to go. PowerPoint does let you do this too as well. It's a slightly different process, but it will do it. I have not tried it in the mobile versions of PowerPoint, but I know that you can do that. Then you can save that. I can come here and I can save that to let's save our file, and I'm going to do a quick way to put it on the iPad. I'm going to go here to Keynote, and we'll just call this Elijah versus Baal. I know Baal. All right, so I'm going to save that. That probably won't take too long to get over there because it's not a very large. It's not a very large file. I'm going to move this back right here. I tell you what, I'm going to hide it actually, and let's come back to our iPad. Okay, so let's go back into Keynote, and I'll go into my presentations. And look here it is right here. Look at that. That was quick. So I'll bring that in here, and so here's my presentation. But now I'm not through showing you what I want to do here. Think in terms of teaching or preaching with both accordance in front of you and your slides in front of you. If you're controlling your own slides, a lot of times in larger churches, you've got someone in the back at a soundboard controlling your slides. But I've been in, especially teaching situations I've been in where I'm controlling my own slides. And so again, accordance can allow you to have two apps here side by side on this iPad Pro. So let me pull up accordance. Let's go to it doesn't matter what Bible we're in, but let's go to we'll close out this and let's go to 1 Kings 18. There we go. 1 Kings 18. I think I should have gone straight to the verse. So it's right around here, right? And then I'm going to grab my, whoops, I did a tap and hold. So let's do it like, there we go. Bring that in here. And so now I've got my presentation. If I want to show my presenter notes, I can do that. You know, because I can come down here and add my teaching notes, or, you know, I can come over here to accordance. Let's lower that for a second. I can come over here to accordance, and in my split screen, I can come over here to my notes and I can get my Bible notes. I didn't think that I had anything on 1 Kings 18, but that's enough for you to get the idea. So I could have teaching notes. I could have teaching notes right there, or my Bible notes there in accordance on the left, the text, the notes, and then I'm ready to give my presentation. I'm not sure what's going to happen if I hit present there, but well, actually, no, it didn't. I'm not connected obviously to a projector or another screen, but here's what I would see. All right, so the people that I'm teaching, they're just going to see this slide. That's all they're going to see right here. But I've got the slide, I've got the teaching notes, I've got accordance, I've got my notes in accordance, I've got all of this right here. And for when we were in Kentucky and I was teaching an adult Bible study class, I taught like this with a projector for probably about 5 or 6 years. This was me, and then occasionally I'd fill in preaching for the pastor, and sometimes it was done in the back. But if I was controlling the slides, this was my exact setup right here. So this is just a great way to use accordance, and also to use something like PowerPoint or Keynote side by side. It will work the exact same way. All right. Now let's go back out, or let's go back to the desktop version of accordance. Let me show you one other trick that you can do here too, finding images that you can take with you for these kinds of presentations. You know, I've shown you the graphic search as well. You know, I've shown you that, and let's move. Oh, I'm sorry. That's my iPad. Let's move the iPad over. That was throwing me. Let me make that full screen again here, and let me show you this particular resource that we either had this on sale. We either had this on sale recently or it's on sale right now. I can't remember. Let's see here. Let me find it this way. Here we go. Historic views. Historic Views of the Holy Land, the American Colony, and Eric Mattson collection. This is a great collection of images because this shows images from the Holy Land, from Palestine, back in an era before industrialization set in. So what you normally do, there are a few pictures like with some older, very much older automobiles, but for the most part, you have all of these scenic landscapes. Here's some fella dressed just like I don't know how. Let me zoom in here for you to see this. He's dressed about the way someone would have dressed 2,000 years ago for the most part. He's got a little walking staff there. I don't know how well you can see this. And then also, these donkeys carrying a burden. So these are wonderful pictures for using in your, and you can do searches and find particular locations. I went to a section that's all in all of these pictures were from the Jerusalem era, but this is so different from what you would see if you went there today. Trying to get past some of that. And just all kinds of things here. There's Jewish, there's Christian, there's Muslim images in here. You go here to Egypt and Sinai, and I mean, look at these two folks sitting by the Nile. If you were to, if you were teaching on something, and you could take it, and then I'll tell you something that I always like to do with these kind of pictures here. Let me drop this into Keynote real quick, and we'll just create a new slide here. Create a blank one. Pull that over. Drop that picture in. What I always like to do is I like to adjust the color on these. I would come in here and I would start to kind of change the temperature, and maybe not too much there on the temp, but change that temperature there, because to me that makes it look even older, right? And I would sometimes when I'd be teaching, I would say something like, okay, now these are actual photographs of biblical times, and I'd kind of wait a minute to see if anyone caught on to that and said, wait a minute, we didn't have cameras back then, but it just kind of gave it a little bit more of an antique look to adjust some of these colors. You don't have to do that, but that was just something that I generally like to play around with a little bit, in these. So again, drop these into your presentation. One other thing too, I'll say about this. There's an entire let's see if I can find it, photo collection based around the story of Ruth. Yeah, here it is, the Ruth story. So and I've done this, but I can't remember whether it was a sermon or a Bible study or what, but I remember teaching on Ruth, and I used these images. So it has biblical text from Ruth 1:2. The names of the two sons were Mahon and Kilion, and they married Moabite women. One named Orpah. You see here. Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law. So you have this woman talking to these two women. Two women went on until Bethlehem, and of course, all of these pictures are taken from. Isn't that a great picture of Boaz right there? Doesn't that look like a Boaz? But these pictures were taken at a time. You don't see jet planes across the sky. You don't see modern buildings. You see everything as it was 2,000 years ago, because that's what a lot of society was like up until industrialization. So it's wonderful to have these. Here they are picking grains out in the fields. She worked steadily except for a short rest. There she is. And of course, a lot of these pictures were posed. Granted, these pictures were posed. I mean, they were wanting to make a Ruth story in these particular examples. Here they are threshing the barley, but it's so great for illustrative purposes to use these. So I wanted to point that out as well. All right. Yesterday I ran overtime, and we didn't have enough time for all the questions that we had. So I wanted to stop a little bit earlier than I did yesterday. We technically have a little bit less than 20 minutes, but are there any questions today that I can answer about some of this, about taking your accordance content mobile and all that, or anything related?
Rick,
And
while
maybe,
people are thinking
yeah,
of questions, I've got a couple here that people have asked that you might be able to answer.
great.
First question. What format do you recommend for note taking? I use Evernote, but I have not discovered how to have both open at the same time. And then some questions about how do you open the split screen? How does the split screen happen again? I think there were some people that were trying to do the split screen thing, and it may be that their device doesn't support split screen. So you may comment
that could
on
be
that.
very true.
Yeah.
Most of the newer iPads, with a few exceptions, that have been released since 2016 or so, 2015, 2016, will do that split screen ability. And so I don't know if I'm signed into Evernote, if it'll let me in. But let's pretend Evernote is there. And so, I can, let me go back here to Accordance, and then I can put Evernote here side by side. So that is certainly something that you could do, to have Accordance on one side and Evernote on the other. I used to be a heavy Evernote user, and like at the level where you paid for it, and it just got more expensive and more expensive. So I kind of switched over to Apple Notes for a lot of things. But yeah, any of these you can put side by side with Accordance. If you don't want to keep your notes in Accordance itself, it's just whatever your preference is.
Okay, great. Here's another question. What's the best way to learn about using Accordance in iOS? Maybe some of the various settings and functionality.
Well, one of the things that I would recommend, usually in our iOS webinars, I give a big plug for our help system, and of course, Mark might not tell you, but he's the one who edits this help system and updates it for new versions and everything else that comes out. So, and I don't think I showed the way that I got to that, but I went to, let's just go back. I went to library, and then, oh, you're not looking at my screen. Sorry. Let me ask, did you see the screen where I had Evernote beside it?
No, that wasn't showing. Sorry about that.
I'm so sorry. Let me pull this back out here again. Let's go back just for a second here. I was too busy looking at the actual device. So for something like Evernote, whoops. I'm not logged into it at the moment, but I can just pull in Evernote right here beside my text. I'm sorry that I didn't have that on the screen as I was sitting here doing it. But that's how I would do that. So for help, go to your library menu on iOS, and then over here to the far right, you see help. Now I'm gonna give double time here to the Android version, and here's our Android version. I actually like this a little bit better on the interface, because I can just come right there, and I come down here to my help. I really like that. I really like that side interface that's on Android now. So you can go to either one of these. And Mark is our person who edits this help system, which I think makes him the foremost expert on Accordance, because he knows everything. He's had to write it. But anyway, if you come into the help, and you come in here to this table of contents. Now you can search, right? You can search right here for anything that's there, and you can find that. But there are some little subtopics out here working with those. So I want to learn more about using instant details. So this our help system is very thorough, and it took the place of our manual from years ago. And notice what it has. It has these images. It has these images that show you exactly what you're wanting to do. Often it will have you a kind of a step-by-step instructions for how to do something. So this is one thing that I would recommend. I would recommend our help system. As far and you can go through this. You can go through this. This is a kind of a logical order that we put it in if you want to go through that and try it out. The other thing that I would recommend is taking part in our mobile webinars. We offer them for Android and iOS. Take part in those. We have some videos on both Vimeo and YouTube and we've got like little sub channels that are specific to Accordance Mobile that you can check out those videos as well. So three different ways that I would recommend. I would also recommend a fourth way would be our forums. Go to our website, to our forums, and we've got where you can ask questions in the forums about either platform.
Great. We have a question about are you able to use the Apple Pencil in the Accordance mobile app?
Not yet, with an asterisk. Well, no. Let me go back. And I don't have my Apple Pencil here on my device. It's very close though, and I'll just talk and stall while I go to get it. But hopefully it's charged up. Okay, so yeah, I've got my Apple Pencil there, and on one hand, I'm using the Apple Pencil right here to move things around. I can certainly do this. I can certainly do all of this with the Apple Pencil. What I cannot do yet is to and look, I did that. I wonder if I can highlight. I wonder if, look at that. I didn't even know I could do that. I'm highlighting here with the Apple Pencil. So you can do this. What you cannot do right now is the like you can do in Accordance 13 for Windows and Mac OS. You can't do the kind of thing where you're drawing. You can't do that yet. Drawing little circles and squares and arrows and all of that. I'd love to see that. However, this is why I first said asterisk before I changed my answer completely. What you can do if you're running Mac OS Catalina and you've got an iPad and you run the little feature called Sidecar, which makes it a second screen, you can use your Apple Pencil in that mode to mark up Accordance. Now again, it's going to be the Accordance for the Mac in that sense. You're going to be basically, it's acting like a second monitor for your Mac, but you can use the pencil to make the circles and the squares and the arrows and all of that, and it works really nicely. It's not something I can demonstrate to you right here in this setup, but that is something that works.
Great. Another question on an Android smartphone, or I guess an Android device. How do I determine what is showing in each half of the screen? Right now, he or she just has Accordance text choices. So I guess choosing between text and tools when you have a split screen.
Yes. Let me grab the Android version here. Here we go. All right, and let me. You can't imagine how confusing it is here to keep up with 3 screens in front of me and 3 different keyboards and all of this. All right, so let's go back and come over here. So on right now, because your notes aren't on here, the only thing that I can do is I can change. That shouldn't have worked. I can change basically my 2 texts that are right here. Okay, so the Android version is not yet supporting notes but wait, it does support. Hold on a second. Let me take that back. It does support tools. It doesn't support notes yet, but it does support tools. So if I come up here, in case you didn't see how I did that, let me put our little pinpoint right here. So I'm right here, and you see I've got 2 texts open, and I've got 2 categories, text and tools. Text is every versified biblical text. Tools is everything else: commentaries, study Bibles, all of that. So if I hit Tools, now I can come through here and I don't remember what I was in on the other side, but here, let's just do ancient Christian text. So I've got my Hebrew Bible and I'm side by side with ancient Christian text. And so I can run those, but I go there and I can choose between text and tools, basically. And that's what determines what's in that second column. Now, one thing that has come up in recent days, if you like, especially on a phone, if your screen is not high enough resolution, you can't put it in landscape mode like I've got my tablet right now. If the screen's not large enough, you can only, or high resolution enough is the real issue, you can only have it vertically in portrait mode, but you can still do the two text, or whether that's a biblical text, whether it's a commentary or study Bible, or just whatever could be put side by side with it.
Great. Okay. Here's another question. Can you share your best practices / tips for presenting using multiple formats? Can you give some tips for professors using iOS in the classroom while using a projector?
Yeah, and I've done this. I was teaching in a classroom. I was teaching in a classroom, and I won't say the university because I'm about to say something negative on students. But I was teaching in a classroom, and I'd done this for a number of years, where I would kind of teach from the iPad, and would be kind of in front of the front of the group. And of course, one thing I should point out, doing any kind of, you never want to depend upon electronic devices as your entire presentation. You've seen people who will put everything into a PowerPoint that they're saying, and well, why don't you just send it to me and let me read it? You want what's on the screen to illustrate what you're doing. And so, I would use Accordance sometimes I would use Keynote or PowerPoint. When I had just Accordance by itself, it was usually when we were looking directly at the text, and I could do searches and I could do those kinds of things. But one thing I did in the classroom, I started doing in the classroom. One thing and this would vary sometimes from class to class. Sometimes I would have classes and the students would all be very into what we were talking about. And then I'd have some classes where students would be kind of laughing in the back as they're watching a YouTube video or something like that. So what I started to do, but once these devices all went wireless, was I would actually sit in the back of the classroom, because we're all adults. I'm not going to say to someone, stop watching YouTube, but it's amazing that if they think you're behind them and can see their screens, that they get really focused really quickly, even though they're supposed to be adults too, and they're paying good money to be in the class. And so I would sit in the back once it was wireless, and I could have Accordance, I could have Keynote, and was sitting back there, and I would do everything remotely, or sometimes I'd walk around the class while I was talking, because I didn't need the focus to be on me anyway. And so that was one of the things that I would do. If you were talking about just Accordance by itself on the screen, if you can do everything from mobile, I think that it's great. If you're doing those basic word searches, if you're talking about how language is being used, if you need to do something a little bit more advanced, you might take the desktop version in on a Mac or Windows laptop, or if it's like, if you're talking about diagrams, like we talked about in the session yesterday, you can create diagrams. You can create diagrams in Accordance on the desktop, put that into your notes, sync that over, and have the biblical text in those notes right there on the screen, and have it side by side, even from the mobile version. So that's a few things that, some things that I have done in the classroom over time.
Great. I think I've got a final question here, and it may need a little explanation. When you convert a user tool to a standard tool, then it's not going to be synced as a user tool anymore, but it'll show up in your library as a tool. So on a Mac, when you're syncing that converted user tool, you can use sync with mobile device and then sync it that way.
Right.
And the question is, can you do the same thing from Windows to an iPad? And I run Windows in a VM and it doesn't work, but I thought it might just be because I'm running it in a VM.
No, there is something broken there, and I know that they're looking into it. It was working at one point, and then all of a sudden, I don't know at what point it stopped working, but I know that that's been problem. Or actually, we've had mixed reports. We've had some people say that it does work just fine. We've had others say that it didn't, and so they're trying to run that down. One temporary solution I would give you until that is worked down, if you're using Windows, is when you create that permanent user tool, quote unquote permanent, it does not destroy the user tool that was editable. So you can take that other version and still have it on your device, and you can sync that over until we fix this issue with Windows where the syncing is causing problems for some.
Well, great. Thanks, Rick. I think that's all the questions we have.
Since we have
Awesome.
a couple of minutes, Mark, did the question on using the images in their organization's video content, Rick, could you address that a little bit more? And
what's
Mark,
the question?
Okay.
You probably have it right there. But go ahead.
If one is allowed, permitted license-wise, to use the images from accordance modules in video content that are copyrighted, because my organization creates video content for social media and licenses some images from various resources, it would be nice if we are allowed to use these images as well. And Mark, you may have something to add to that.
Yeah, I sent a link, and I've got one here from the Accordance website that talks a little bit about this. And since Rick doesn't have it right in front of him, let me just read it. If you create something from the atlas and the timeline, you can use those any way you'd like. Just acknowledge the source, please. If you have images and from the photo guide, for example, that contains images that Accordance has created, and you're using it for your students, that's fine. But they're not supposed to be posted online for public access. And then images that have copyright. So a lot of our publishers will have modules that have images in them, and you'll just need to follow the guidelines from the publishers. And yeah, Rick, if you have anything to add on top of that.
Yeah, I would just say usually for that last category there, usually it means contacting the publisher and asking permission from them. And it's probably according to how you're going to use that. And even some of the things that we've done in-house, such as like our photo guides, some of those the photographer has still retained copyright. Like I have some of the pictures in the turkey one, I think, or it may even be in the photo commentary. Those are technically mine. Now I would tell you, I'll just give blank. You can use them if you want to. It'd be nice if you gave credit, but I'm not going to get upset if you don't. I probably won't see it. But even in some of the titles that we produce, there might be kind of like sub copyrights, because we're using them by permission. So you just want to make sure that you read the information in each module that you're in.
Great, I think that's it. Unless I don't see any more questions coming in.